and welcome in to the Patrick Party pregame show. The Big Ten is back. They're a little bit late to the party, as many would say, but they're finally here, and that's all that matters. We have football, and we are excited to get going. So let's go ahead and get on into the program. I'm Patrick Bingham. Welcome into the Patrick Party pregame show. Well, we have a lot going on this morning. The Big Ten's back. The Mountain West is back. You might have forgotten about that, but Boise State, all those teams, Wyoming, they're all back. So we get a little bit more going, a little bit fuller of a plate here as we get ready for another college football Saturday. We got a lot of games on the Saturday slate today. The game in Minneapolis, you got the game in Columbus, Ohio, just lots of games going on. It's fun to have the Big Ten back. Won't have a lot of fans. Up north, they're a little bit more strict, but I think all the better. It's exciting that we have more and more going on. Well, the Patrick Party pregame show, let's go ahead and get into just our sports headlines. We like to kind of just recap the sports world over the past week since the last time that we met. Well, we had the NLCS end. Now we have a World Series set. The Los Angeles Dodgers lead 2-1. They won last night over the Tampa Bay Rays. The NBA is looking at starting their season just before Christmas, going to a 72-game season, not an 82-game season. So it doesn't look like they're going to end up changing things up too much. And the NFL just keeps on going. They've actually gotten a little bit better with the whole COVID thing. So I think that's about it for our major sports headlines. Of course, we're going to talk about college football all day long here on the Patrick Party pregame show. But we want to tell you our location reveal. That's right, we're going to be from Byron Smokehouse, where we're going to make our picks, breakfast with the Tigers. So let's go ahead and just tell you, Auburn has played in a lot of those noon time slot games, 11 a.m. if you live in the central time zone. So it's breakfast with the Tigers. You're eating breakfast, getting ready for the Auburn game. So we're going to be highlighting the local breakfast restaurants here in Auburn and Opelika, Alabama, every time Auburn plays in that time slot. So it's breakfast with the Tigers. I'm going to go ahead and say it, part one. I'm sure we'll have another one. So breakfast with the Tigers from Byron's Smokehouse. So they have a really good, and we say it in the video, they have a really good sausage, egg, and cheese biscuit. But we also had a big day a couple of days ago, 3 years of the Patrick Party. That's right, October 20th, 2017, the first time we ever made a Patrick Party, put it out. We were from Chicago. Auburn played Arkansas that weekend in 2017. Penn State played Michigan. USC played Notre Dame in a big game. So it was a big college football weekend. We made our first ever pick. It was more closer to the end of the season in 17. Of course, now the Big Ten hadn't even started yet. But so we're going to be showing our Patrick Party, some of our favorite ones, some of our favorite 1-minute little shows all throughout the broadcast. So before we get into our Saturday slate, we're going to go ahead and show you that first ever Patrick Party from Chicago as we celebrate three years of the Patrick Party all throughout the show today.
Back, Party Town is Chi-Town. We're here. We're about to make some college football picks. Let's get started. First, we have number 19 Michigan and number 2 Penn State. It's going to be whiteout conditions in Happy Valley. I think it won't be as close as people think. Michigan's not the real deal. Penn State will get it done, and it'll improve Saquon Barkley's Heisman polls. Next, we have USC Notre Dame. An interesting game. Notre Dame's done a lot better than we thought they would have this year. I picked Notre Dame in a close one in South Bend, just down the road. And now for our game of the week, we have the number 21 Auburn Tigers. They just suffered a loss last week to LSU to Brett Bielema's Arkansas Razorbacks. I think Auburn will pull out a tight one in Fayetteville, and we'll keep the party wherever we go, live in Chicago.
Well, what a good one. Of course, the first ever. You got it, even though it's sometimes going to be a little hard for me to watch, because get a little nervous there at the end. You got to embrace your first ever show. So that's what we're doing. We'll be going through we'll be telling you them right as we get up to them. But we have some fun ones even out of the country, if you remember when we did that. But let's go ahead and get into our Saturday slate as we get through all of the big games this Saturday. So let's go ahead and start with Nebraska and Ohio State. Big noon game on Fox to kick off the start of the Big Ten. Well, it's a big one. Ohio State, Nebraska in the Horseshoe, Ohio Stadium, big noon game on Fox. So Nebraska was one of the leading forces, one of the leading teams, their fan bases, their parents, their coach. Remember, they even said, when the Big Ten, they came out, they had this big elaborate schedule. They were so smart. They were geniuses. They have this just schedule nobody could ever deal with. And then they said, we're not going to play. And so then nobody else really followed them. And all the parents of the Big Ten got mad that the other teams were still playing. And they thought that their conference just gave up. And so Nebraska started saying, well, you know what? We might just go to another conference for this year. We might just go to the Big 12. Well, then it got really ugly. The Big 10 got involved, said, no, if you go play for another conference, you can say goodbye to the Big 10. And it ended up that after all the fighting, football is back, and Nebraska gets rewarded with playing Ohio State week 1. Oh, I want to say they play like Michigan week 2. So they got what they wanted, and that's all we have to say about that. Ohio State, it's national championship or bust. We've said that a couple times. Justin Fields, he's going to look to win a Heisman. I honestly think, for a breakout player, you don't have that much time. You only have 8 games plus a potential conference championship. So, I just think it'd be really hard. Everyone knows Justin Fields, but if you were some player that wasn't maybe the most popular, I think it'd be really hard to come out and make a big statement. Because people like Trevor Lawrence, they've had all this time. They've had a whole bunch more games, XYZ. So we'll see. But I don't think it's gonna be that good of a game, to be completely honest. Our next ranked on ranked matchup, we have NC State, North Carolina. How is NC State ranked? What have they done? I don't want to be rude, but do we know? I don't know. But we'll see. I think North Carolina, they came off their loss last week to Florida State, their first loss of the season. It was kind of a shocker. At least I was shocked. They were all the way up to 5. I said it. I said 5. I think I said it 5 times. Well, I probably did. Here on the pregame show, they ended up falling back to 14. They lost to Florida State. I guess they got too ahead of themselves because Florida State has not been very good. Of course, they did have Mike Norvell back, so I guess that helps. But we'll see. NC State, I just think they're one of those teams that I don't know. I don't see this one being very close, especially after the loss last week. I don't think NC State is catching Mac Brown's squad at a good time. So that's really all I have to say about that one. We'll talk about that later in the show, of course. Then you have a big one in Oxford, Mississippi, the Auburn Tigers and the Ole Miss Rebels, an unranked matchup. That's right, you heard it right. Auburn is not ranked because they've started 2-2. They lost at Georgia, then they lost last week to South Carolina, had 3 turnovers. Definitely something they cannot do against this Ole Miss offense, who will be just going all over the yard today. Lane Kiffin is really good at exploiting weaknesses on defenses. Ole Miss's offense, for the first time, did not score above 30 points last week to Arkansas. Barry Odom, if there's some Coordinator of the Year award, he deserves it. He has really turned that Arkansas defense around. But then, Kevin Steele, he has a blueprint for how to beat him. Barry Odom gave it to him last week, so we'll see if Auburn's defense can pull it off. We know Kevin Steele's a good defensive coordinator. Auburn's just had some injuries, so it's been really tough. That offense has really got to get going. This Ole Miss defense stinks. Auburn is really going to have to be able to run the ball effectively, throw it all over the field, and score lots of points if they want to beat this Rebel squad. And then Ole Miss, we'll just see. Lane Kiffin's going to have something special dialed up, so it should be a fun one in Vaught-Hemingway Stadium. Breakfast with the Tigers at 12 Eastern, 11 Central on SEC Network, right after SEC Nation. Then we have a game that we thought was going to be a lot bigger of a deal a couple weeks ago. You have Oklahoma and TCU. Well, TCU's kind of been a little bit all over the place, and so is Oklahoma. Oklahoma, they lost to Iowa State. They lost to somebody else that they weren't supposed to lose to. I really don't remember. But we'll see. They lost to Iowa. Yes. Okay. And then, TCU, they've just not really been as great. Gary Patterson does have a really strong defense. Oklahoma surely does not. But Oklahoma's offense has also not been as good as in years past. So we'll see what Lincoln Riley can dial up. We'll see if Oklahoma can kind of get back to their winning ways. They won last week. We'll see if they can kind of keep the ball rolling on the road on ABC and that 11 time slot. Next up on the Saturday slate, well, these are the 2 front runners for the Big 12, and let me tell you, I surely did not pick it. Iowa State, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State number 6 in the country. That's pretty high. Iowa State all the way up to number 17. Iowa State lost to Louisiana Lafayette week 1. They went and beat Oklahoma. They beat some other teams. They find themselves ranked even after we thought it was a disaster, which it was a disaster start. In Boone Pickens Stadium on Fox, right after that Ohio State-Nebraska game. This is a big game. The winner of this game is who the Big 12 is going to really need to step it up and keep winning if they want to get a team into the playoff. They've really beaten each other up so far, so we'll see how all that goes down. But the winner of this game is really going to have to go the distance if the Big 12 wants to get a team in to the Final Four. Then we have Indiana and Penn State. Penn State, number 8 in the country, starting off their season. Just another season under James Franklin. They've been pretty successful under James Franklin so far. They won the Cotton Bowl last year against Memphis. Indiana's slowly been getting better. They've renovated their stadium, if that means anything. And it'll be there in Memorial Stadium on Fox Sports 1, that middle of the day time slot. I just think Penn State's really, James Franklin's brought Penn State all the way back. I think they're a really good team this year. And I don't think this one's going to be too close. Yeah, I don't pick this one, so I'll go ahead. I'll pick Penn State. And then you have Missouri and Kentucky out in Columbia, Missouri. Kentucky, okay, well, let's talk about this. So Missouri, they beat LSU. We're shocked. They hold LSU at the goal line. Big thing. We'll talk about LSU in a second. They have some quarterback problems. But, Missouri wins this big momentum thing, this big buy-in game for their new head coach. Kentucky, on the other hand, they get off to a rough start. They lose to Auburn. They lose to Ole Miss. But then they go on and they end up winning their next 2 games. So now they're back to your 2-2. We'll just have to see what Kentucky can do. Both these teams should be running on really high momentum. But Missouri didn't play last week. That's right. They did not get to play. They were going to play Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's had COVID problems. And so we'll have to see what's really happened. A lot of people think, well, this could have killed their momentum. Maybe they're not going to win anymore. Well, I think when you're playing a 10-game SEC schedule, 2 weeks off might be really nice. But they're going to have to go the distance after this if they really want to surprise some people. So we're just going to have to see what's going to go on. This is a very interesting game, I think. An underrated, not the most exciting game, but I think a very interesting game in the SEC today. The SEC only has 4 games. That was game number 1. Game number 2, Tiger Stadium. We have a big one between South Carolina and LSU on ESPN Saturday night. So LSU is going to be without their quarterback. That's right, Miles Brennan is not going to be at the game today. Lower body injury. TJ Finley, their true freshman quarterback, will be starting. And it's not like that LSU offense was really that good to start. So I think there's some cause for concern. South Carolina coming off a big momentum win against Auburn. That defense has really been strong. LSU's defense has not really been strong. This one, I'm starting to lean towards South Carolina ever so slightly. This is going to be a very, very interesting game, to say the least. Yes, I'm very interested in this game. Our 4th, we'll talk about that game a little bit later. Our 3rd SEC game of the day, Alabama, Tennessee. Neyland Stadium. Tennessee has not beaten Alabama since 2006. It's been a minute. Let's see. 2006, I was 3. I'm now 17. So, it's been a minute. Alabama, they've been smoking lots of cigars recently. Every time they beat Tennessee, that's the big tradition. They smoke the cigars. Tennessee, maybe Alabama will start having some problems because they've been doing it so much. Tennessee can't win. But it'll be in Neyland Stadium today, SEC on CBS. We'll see. If Tennessee can score within 20 points, I would be shocked. If it can be within 20 points, I would just be so shocked. They have not shown any ability to do that against any really, truly great team. And then last week they got blown out by Kentucky at home. So it's really been just quite a shock. Tennessee has not been as great as everybody thought they would be. Shocker. I think we've heard this narrative before. And then on the ACC Network, Hard Rock Stadium, Virginia, Miami, a big-time game. Miami is kind of creeped back up after their loss to Clemson. They've kind of gotten back up to 11 in the country. They play Virginia on the ACC Network tonight. Virginia, they had a really big year last year. They were able to make it to the Orange Bowl, make it to the ACC Championship. They didn't win either of those two, but they've lost a whole bunch of talent. We're going to have to see if they can just pull it together and get a big win. I don't think they will. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I'm not picking this game from Byron, so we'll say it. I like Miami. And then we have our big game, the Patrick Party's game of the week. We have Michigan and Minnesota from TCF Bank Stadium on ABC, 7:30 on Saturday Night Football on ABC. The Big Ten is back. This is a big statement game for both of these teams. Minnesota coming off that Outback Bowl win. They bring back their quarterback and a couple of their key wide receivers. Their defense not as strong, but Michigan's offense hasn't been as strong in years past. It's strength on strength for both of these squads between Minnesota's offense and Michigan's defense. Big game for Jim Harbaugh. A big game for PJ Fleck to really just yet again say last year wasn't just some fluky, yay, Minnesota's going to be good like one year in their entire life. No, Minnesota can be a strong team. He's got to prove that tonight at home against Michigan. There won't be any fans through most of the Big Ten. It'll be a weird atmosphere, but this is going to be a very interesting one, a big game in the Big Ten. Well, that's going to wrap it up for our Saturday slate, but we're going to go ahead and show you just another Patrick Party video as we keep rolling on here on the Patrick Party. So, as we commemorate 3 years of the Patrick Party. So, this is our third ever Patrick Party episode when we broadcasted from Austin, Texas, Darrell K. Texas Memorial Stadium. Is that long enough for you? It's long enough for me. It took me a couple times to say it if I remember right. So here's the Patrick Party from Austin back in 2017.
And the Patrick Party's back live from Darrell K. Royal Texas Memorial Stadium here for our Southwest special. We're going to pick 3 Southwest games today. First, we have Bedlam, Oklahoma State. Almost to where it was going to be a top 10 matchup. I think it's in Oklahoma State. It's going to be a close game. I do think Baker Mayfield will pull it out in the end. It will be a tight one. Next, we have Auburn, Texas A&M, live from Kyle Field at 11 in the morning. Auburn having a bye week and Texas A&M just getting beat by Mississippi State. It'll be a close one, but I do think Auburn will get the victory going into next week's big game in the Deep South's oldest rivalry. And now we have the game everyone that's not here is excited for. Texas versus TCU. It'll actually be in Fort Worth, not here. I think it'll be a close one. TCU did just lose to Iowa State, but it's strictly business. TCU will get the victory. We hope you enjoyed the Patrick Party live from Darrell K. Royal Texas Memorial Stadium here at the University of Texas with our Southwest special.
Well, what a fun one. Yes, we were able to get into that stadium. You know, they have a whole bunch of classrooms on that side. When you're just watching the video that you could see, we just started walking up staircases like we were just supposed to be there, and we were able, a gate was open. We walked around the stadium, got to see inside. They're actually renovating that end zone, by the way. Building a whole bunch of fancy suites, a nice big jumbotron. You know, Texas had the biggest one for a long time, then A&M upped the scale, built an even bigger one. So now Texas is trying to get them back. Just one of the last little things they can do in a rivalry that should be played. Texas actually wants to play it now after, they pitched their big fit. It actually would be better if they did play it. They realized that. And then Texas A&M said, no, we don't need you. We're good. Thanks, though. So who knows? Maybe one day they'll end up playing. But we have a new segment, Saturday Statements. So we're going to make a couple of statements that I just think hands down will happen here on this Saturday in the college football season. Well, let's just go ahead and start. So, if Auburn scores above 35 points, statement number 1. If Auburn scores above 39 points, they will win in Oxford, Mississippi today. They need to score 35 points or more, and if they do, they will win. I think Auburn's defense is going to surprise some people. Everyone thinks, I think Lane Kiffin, they're going to play great, but Ole Miss is going to score in the 30s. They have the capabilities of scoring in the 50s. I think Auburn's defense is going to hold them to the 30s. If Auburn scores above 35 points, they win. Statement 1. Statement 2. Tennessee does not get within 30 points of Alabama today. 30. Tennessee is just not as good as we thought they would be. I never thought they would be that great, but that is just kind of my thought, that Tennessee will not get within 30 points of Alabama. Remember, they got within about 25-ish of Georgia, and Georgia spotted them 7 points when they snapped it over their head on the first play of the game. So it might be close at halftime. I think Alabama wins by 30. And then our last game, Clemson. I don't think Clemson hit 70 points. The last statement. Clemson hit 73 points, or maybe it was 72. I think it was 73 points against Georgia Tech. It's a really bad Syracuse team. I don't think they're going to hit 70 today. I just think they're going to call it off before then. So I like Clemson under 70 points today. They still get the win really big. So that's going to do it for our Saturday segments. And now for our next segment that hopefully we can eventually just get rid of. COVID craziness. Well, we had a lot of COVID craziness last week. Not as much this week. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it. We don't need craziness here. I mean, we got craziness, but we don't need COVID craziness. So let's go ahead and just see. So in the SEC, we read off last week all of the changes going around. We had a lot going on, a lot of different things happening. But Florida is not playing this week. Florida was supposed to play. Who were they supposed to play? Oh, I don't remember. But Florida is not playing today. They had their games all moved. Oh, here it is. So Florida was supposed to play Missouri today. They moved it. They moved a whole bunch of things around so Missouri could play Kentucky today, and Florida, Missouri will play next week because Florida had their big outbreak. Remember all the irony with that right after the Florida governor said you can fill up the stadiums if you want to. Dan Mullen said we're going to have 90,000 people in here for Florida and LSU. And then 20 Florida players got it, and they didn't even play the game. So, not that we are happy about that. That's just it's a little ironic. So Florida is really the only one that's not playing today. The SEC only has 4 games today, but a lot of that is because of just pre-scheduled bye weeks and things. We're trying to have more bye weeks in this season for COVID stuff. So, that's about it. Thankfully, that's about it. I mean, no more COVID craziness, at least today. We might have some more later. Let's go ahead and get into one of our new segments from last week. We're going to continue it this week. The spread. I really like the spread. Hopefully you do too. So the spread, game 1. And we try to pick interesting games here where it's not games that I think are going to be close like this one, but Clemson 46 over, or minus 46 over Syracuse. I am going to go with Clemson. I think Clemson wins by more than 46. Syracuse might score 7 points. They might score 10 points, but they're not going to score more than 10 points. They're not going to score 11 points or 12 points. So I like Clemson. I like Clemson in this one. Clemson minus 46. I would pick the Tigers. Our next one, Ohio State and Nebraska. This is a motivated Ohio State team. I really don't know what to think of Nebraska and Scott Frost. I just don't know what'll be going on. Maybe you do. I don't really know what to expect from Nebraska, but I can tell you one thing. Ohio State will be good, and I don't think this game's going to be very close. I'm going to take Ohio State minus 27. Make it whatever number above that you want. I like Ohio State and this one big. Remember last year, College Game Day went to that game. It was really hyped up, and it was 35-0 at halftime. Bizarre. So I like Ohio State yet again. Maybe not that dramatic, but I like a motivated Ohio State team that knows they have to impress people if they want to get into that playoff. Our next game, Oklahoma and TCU. Well, this is a good one. Oklahoma minus 6.5. I'm going to go with TCU in this one. I don't know if I'm going to pick TCU outright per se, but I'm definitely going to get with Oklahoma. I think this one's going to be close. I don't think there's going to be a lot of points in this game. Or as much points as you would think in your classic Big 12 games. The defenses have actually been a little bit better in the Big 12 this year. Partly, in fact, because Oklahoma's offense has been down. But I'm going to go with TCU in this one. I'm not going to pick TCU outright, but I think this could be a very close down to the finish game. And then our last one, LSU under 5 or minus 5 over South Carolina. LSU, I remember I read off in the Saturday slate all of the problems LSU is going through. I'm not going to pick LSU. I'm picking South Carolina. I think this one's going to be close. I might go ahead. I'm going to say it. Well, I think I picked this game at Byron's too, but we'll go ahead and say it. I'm picking South Carolina outright to go ahead and win. So that's going to do it for the spread, and we're going to go ahead before we get into our next segment, watch another old Patrick Party. Our third one, we got 5 to watch, plus, of course, the one that we're actually doing today. And this one is our California kickoff. And why do I say it funny? Why do I say California kickoff? Well, because on all of my graphics, I straight up spelled California wrong. Forgot the R. It's the California kickoff. It took me a year, and then I was like, oh, wait. I went back and watched it. So you got to embrace it because it's honestly a little bit funny. So here it is, the California kickoff. Actually, a really cool show. Went all throughout the state of California. So here it is, the California kickoff. The California kickoff starts now. The Patrick Party's here at Stanford Stadium. Stanford and San Diego State start off the season on Friday night. I think the Big Trees, the Cardinal, will get it done. We're here at AT&T Park, home of the Giants. The Patrick Party, Halliburton is way across the bay, and they're playing North Carolina, and I think the Golden Bears will win. Patrick Party's here on the Pacific Coast. This Pacific Coast Highway takes you all the way to LA. UCLA and Cincinnati play, and I think Chip Kelly's era will start off with the win. We're here in Napa Valley in California. Tennessee, West Virginia are playing in Charlotte. I think West Virginia and Will Greer will win. The Patrick Party's here in Yosemite National Park here with the tree Big Giant. Ole Miss, Texas Tech are playing in Houston. I think Texas Tech will win. The Patrick Party's here at Vernal Falls in Yosemite, California. Michigan and Notre Dame are playing, but I think the luck of the Irish will give Notre Dame the victory. The Patrick Party's here in Pebble Beach with Lone Cypress in the background. Auburn, Washington open up the season in Atlanta, and of course I'm picking Auburn. Well, that's a fun one for sure. The tour of California. Definitely a creative and a fun way to kick off the 2018 season. After our first little mini season of the Patrick Party, because we didn't start at the very beginning of 2017. So to kick off the brand new season, it's a fun one on the California kickoff. So that's going to be it for that. But let's go ahead and get into our top 25 breakdown. We had some movement in the polls with Georgia losing, a whole bunch of stuff. Let's go ahead and just show it to you. So we had a lot going on in the polls today, but it was a very interesting one for sure. So a lot of people still not ranking the Big Ten teams until they play today. I don't really know why. I mean, who really cares? Because then you're giving teams false hope, and it really doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, they will get ranked where they're supposed to. So I don't really know why this has to be such a big deal, but it is. And that's just, I guess, with everything. So you have Clemson staying in that number 1 spot, Alabama in that number 2. Notre Dame slides up into that number 3 spot. Georgia falls back to 4, which I think is fair. Alabama is just a truly elite team. Then you have Ohio State in the 5. I guess a couple more people ranking them versus not. Oklahoma State all the way up to the 6. Very surprising for sure. We'll see if they can stay there. Of course, they got a big game tonight to prove it. Then you have Texas A&M in that 7. Man, that's pretty high. I mean, I guess they beat Florida. They earned it. Penn State in the 8. Cincinnati all the way up there in the 9, the highest group of 5 ranked team. Florida's up in the 10. Miami is back kind of around 11 after a couple weeks after they lost to Clemson. BYU is at 12. Definitely a shot at maybe getting that group of 5 squad or pick, whatever, which will be played. That game will be played in the Fiesta Bowl, so that would really be big for BYU. And I'm sure BYU has enjoyed playing when Utah hasn't. Anyways, Oregon in the 13. North Carolina falls back to 14 after losing. They were all the way up to number 5, which I think was a little crazy. Wisconsin in the 14, tied with North Carolina in the 14. Wisconsin deserves to be moved way up. They're a good team. SMU in the 16. Iowa State up to 17. Michigan's kind of slowly creeped in into 18. Virginia Tech 19. Kansas State, who's gotten some big wins after losing to Arkansas State in week 1 at 20. Minnesota 21. Marshall is in the polls at 22. NC State slides in at 23. Somehow USC's ranked at 24. And Coastal Carolina, first time they've ever been ranked as an FBS program, at number 25 to round out our polls. Nothing I'd really disagree with except, I don't know, I think Oklahoma State's a little high. Wisconsin could be higher. Cincinnati, I think number 9's a little too much. But yeah, that's all I really got for that in our top 25 breakdown. So let's go ahead and get into one of the big storylines today. Welcome back, Big Ten. As we said, they're late to the party, but better show up than never. Or better late than never, I guess is the quote. So let's just talk about the Big Ten for a while. Everyone feels and is thinking like, man, it's just Ohio State and everybody else. Well, I'm actually going to disagree with that. I'm not saying I don't think Ohio State's going to win the Big Ten. I think Ohio State's a very good team. I think Justin Fields is an elite quarterback. He'll be a top pick, most likely, in this upcoming draft. But I think Penn State's got a really good team. I think Minnesota could have a good team. I think it's going to be an interesting race in the West, the Big Ten West, between Minnesota and Wisconsin. And that's what I think it'll come down to. I think that'll be a really good game. Maybe somebody else could challenge in the West. Maybe Nebraska could actually be semi-decent for the first time in almost my entire. I mean, they won a. They got to a national championship. Maybe they even won one long time ago. But they have won one. I'm thinking in my lifetime since 2003. No, they haven't. They got to one against Miami. That was it. Miami blew them out in the Rose Bowl. Where was I? So maybe Nebraska could challenge, but I'm really thinking that Big Ten West is going to come down to Minnesota and Wisconsin. Then the East, man, Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, just right off the bat. Michigan State has a new head coach. Rutgers will probably stink again. You can say it. Breaking news. Well, it's not breaking news because everybody knew it. We can now confirm Rutgers is not going to be very good. Maybe they will. And that could come back to haunt me. Who knows? I think it's going to come down to Ohio State and Penn State. Sorry, Michigan fans. I just don't think they got this kind of. It's not a rebuilding year per se, but to some extent it kind of is. I don't know. It's just they're not. They have a lot of younger players. They're going to have to rely, especially tonight, on a whole bunch of sophomores to play like seniors. Ohio State definitely has more of the talent and a lot of the older players. I think that always will help, especially in this bizarre offseason. I think it's going to be between Ohio State and Penn State. Of course, I was trying to think of where that game would be. Does it really matter? Because if no fans are going to be there, what difference does it make if it's a whiteout conditions or, the horseshoe, blackout? No, it doesn't matter. So I think it's going to probably come down to a rematch of last year, Ohio State, Wisconsin. Don't count out Penn State or Minnesota. I think it's going to be a fun little race, a sprint, as I've said, our 8-game sprint to the finish for the Big Ten. And it's going to be a really quick sprint for the Pac-12, which will come back in yet another couple weeks. I think around November 3rd, whenever that weekend is. So that's going to do it for our Big Ten is Back segment. Lots to cover today, but we'll get into our breakdown. We actually have a new little name for it. Instead of Bingham's Breakdowns, we got a new name. Get excited for that segment coming up. But that's going to do it for our Big Ten is Back segment. Just kind of whatever. We like the SEC here. Let's just say it. The SEC is better, but the Big Ten's going to have a big race. It's going to be a lot of fun. So that'll do it for that. So we got one more we actually have two more Patrick parties to show you. This is a fun one from season 2. If you remember when Auburn went on that big run in basketball, they won the SEC tournament, and we covered the SEC tournament from Florence, Italy. Actually, a whole bunch of places around Italy went on a big trip that week. But this is one of my favorite ones. It's our Tour of Florence show as we covered the SEC basketball tournament. The Patrick Party is here walking the streets of Florence. Gelato is right there. Alabama and Kentucky play a very big game in the SEC tournament. Big for Alabama, but I don't think the Big Elephants will beat the mighty Wildcats in Nashville. LSU, the 1 seed, without their coach, will play Florida in the next round, the quarterfinals, but I think the Gators will get a big win for them because LSU without their coach is going to be really hard for them to win. The Patrick Party is here at Ponte Vecchio Bridge here in Florence, Italy. The Tennessee Volunteers play the Mississippi State Bulldogs after Mississippi State beat Texas A&M, but I think the Bulldogs will fall just short of the Volunteers as Tennessee gets back on a right foot and advances. The Patrick Party is here in front of Florence's main church. I'm not going to try to begin to pronounce it, but on the other side, down in Nashville, you have South Carolina, the 4 seed, playing Auburn. I think Auburn lost a tight game, got in foul trouble in Columbia, but I think the Auburn Tigers will get a big win, sending them to the semifinal. Well, that was a fun one from Florence as we covered that run all the way through. Of course, our last show of that trip and of that, SEC tournament run for the Tigers was in the airport in London on St. Patrick's Day as the Tigers played Tennessee for an SEC tournament championship, a big game for sure. We found out as we were landing, the game was on while we were on the plane coming back. Right as we were hovering around Atlanta, my phone beeped, found out Auburn won. Anyways, let's get into our over-under segment as we keep it going here on the Patrick Party pregame show, and we're going to start with Auburn and Ole Miss. Well, over-under, the total is 72 points. That would mean if both teams scored around 35, that would get them to 70. So it's going to be around that. I think if Auburn needs to win, it needs to be under 72. So I'm going to go ahead and just say 72. I'm going to go with the under on this one. I think if Auburn wants to win, they got to keep this one in the 30s or less. I'm going to go with the under. Then we have TCU and Oklahoma. This is kind of low for the Big 12. You have 59 is our over-under number. Oklahoma's offense hadn't been as great in years past. You always know Gary Patterson's going to have a strong defensive team. I'm going to have to go, let's see, 59 would be about, it's pretty much 60, so you need both teams to score around 30. I'm gonna go with the over in this one. I think this one could be a little bit more scoring than a lot of people think. I think Oklahoma might come out and surprise a couple people. We'll see. Oklahoma's not going to the playoffs. Maybe I should just say that a little bit louder. But I'm gonna have to go with the over on this one. Then you have South Carolina, LSU. Our over/under is 55.5. I'm gonna go with the under in this one for sure. LSU's quarterback not going to be playing today. Miles Brennan, due to a lower body injury. TJ Finley will be in there. I'm going to have to go with the under on this one. South Carolina's got a really good defense. Maybe South Carolina's offense could put up some points, but I'm definitely going to go with the under in this one. Then our last over-under, at 53, we have Michigan and Minnesota. There are some cold conditions in Minneapolis today, around 33 degrees. They said it might even snow. That's what my weather app said, at least. So I don't really know what to expect weather-wise. Normally when the weather is bad, and it is classic Big Ten teams, I'm going to have to go with the under in this one. Minnesota has a really strong offense. Michigan, not so much, but I think it's going to be one of those classic defensive games, low scoring, maybe in the teens. Maybe we get up into the 20s, maybe. But I'm going to have to go with the under on this one for Michigan and Minnesota. We're going to now go ahead and get into our By the Numbers segment as we break down some of the games today by their all-time series and those type of numbers. We're going to go ahead and start with Baylor and Texas. Well, all-time, Texas leads 78 wins to 27 wins on Baylor's side. There have been 4 ties. Texas has a 1-game winning streak. They won last year. Before that, Texas won 4 games in a row, and then get to a couple Baylor wins right when they first joined the Big 12, and then Texas has a whole bunch of big streaks. Texas' longest streak was 16 wins from 1958 to 1973. Baylor's only beaten Texas at best 2 times in a row. So Texas definitely dominates the series. They dominate all of the all-time stats, your national championship, all-time records, conference championships, all of those kind of things. Texas controls all of those stats by a lot. So kind of a lopsided series, but Baylor's kind of been able to compete. Well, they have been able to compete with Texas since they've joined the conference. So we'll see if things can change. I don't know. But over time, I don't think things will change. But I think today, Baylor's definitely got a good shot at winning. So our next game here on our By the Numbers segment is Alabama and Tennessee. Well, we know they played a whole bunch of times, but as of late, Alabama's dominated. They're on a 13-game winning streak. Starting that 2007 season, Saban has never lost to Alabama. Saban's first time, his first year at Alabama was in 13. Alabama, this is the longest win streak they've ever been on. Tennessee did go on a 7-game win streak from 1995 to 2001. Alabama leads this all-time series 56-38 with 7 wins. Let's think. It would be... Yeah, Tennessee would be very close in this series, or they were before Alabama went on a 13-game winning streak. So that just kind of shows you the times Tennessee has had over the last 10, 13 years, and Alabama drastically different. Like I said, I don't think this one's going to be too close today. Alabama leads in most of the all-time stats with a lot of help from the last 10 years in the Saban era. So this is still a rivalry game, but it hasn't been quite the same since Saban has made his way over to Tuscaloosa. Then we have Auburn Ole Miss by the numbers. Auburn leads the all-time series 33-10, no ties. Auburn's on a 4-game winning streak from 2016 to 2019. Remember, Auburn lost in 15. Auburn had a bad year in 15. Remember, Auburn won one of the biggest games in this series was in 2014, number 3, Auburn versus number 4, Ole Miss, on the road, Vaught Hemingway Stadium. kind of a little bit of a sad ending, just the way with Laquan Treadwell getting hurt. Auburn ended up getting the big win on the road. That defense somehow was able to hold, was able to just let the offense score over 38 points and somehow still win. That defense was awful in 14. But Auburn's longest win streak against the Rebels was 9 games from 1971 to 91. Well, they didn't play much during then. And then Ole Miss has only led in 3 games. So it's definitely been an Auburn-controlled series. Ole Miss does lead in some of the all-time stats. Just in the bowl record, they have a little bit better of a bowl record. They're 23-13 and no ties in bowl games. Auburn's 24-18-2. So there you go. Ole Miss leads Auburn in some all-time stats for sure. But that's going to do it for our Auburn-Ole Miss by the numbers. And then our last one, we haven't talked about this game yet, but Kansas plays Kansas State in a big game for sure. The Jayhawks, they could really use a win, but although Kansas has controlled this all-time series, Kansas State has had their number as of recently. Kansas State has won 11 games in a row going back from 2009. Kansas also went on an 11. This is the longest win streak they've had. They also went on a big win streak in the early 2000s. Kansas, though, has been on a 10-game winning streak before. So this definitely been, I'm looking at the graph. It's been a very streaky rivalry for sure. Kansas does lead at 65-47 with 5 ties. But as of recently, Kansas State has had the Jayhawks number. So that's going to do it for our By the Numbers segment. And this is the last Patrick Party we'll show you, at least the old ones. This was one of, I would say this is one of the best ones I've ever done. A very cool moment when Auburn won the Iron Bowl in 2019. We got to stand on top of the Thomas Building. Our Patrick Party post-game show we had, don't do most of those, only for the big games. But here's the scene after the 2019 Iron Bowl. What a game, what an Iron Bowl, what a view. To put the late line Bramlett, the view from up here is sheer perfection. Tigers 48, Tide 45. The Patrick Party postgame is here. It was a wild one in Jordan-Hare Stadium. Back and forth, tons of lead changes. 2 big pick sixes helped the Tigers get the win. The defense wasn't as great. It was a high-scoring game. No one saw that coming. And Anders Carlson had the game of his life, made lots of clutch field goals. Obviously, a huge win for Auburn. The Tide's playoff hopes are over, and we'll be partying here in Toomer's Corner until the wee hours of the morning. The Patrick Party will also be back next week, so don't forget to watch us. That's all here from the top of the Thomas Building at Toomer's Corner. Well, that was definitely a fun one, a big win for the Tigers for sure. But we got our new segment, Bingham's Booms. That's right, Gus Malzahn known for doing the big old boom when Auburn gets a big score or something. So this is our new little segment as we break down the best game in each time slot for the day. So let's go ahead and just get on into our Bingham's Booms games of the week. So we're going to go ahead and start it off with Auburn-Ole Miss, the best game of that early time slot. Your noon, 11 o'clock, depending on where you live. Vaught-Hemingway Stadium. The Tigers take on the Rebels on ESPN. A big-time matchup. Auburn is going to have to hold that Ole Miss team under 40 points if they want to win. Really under 35 points. Auburn's offense is going to have to explode against a terrible Rebel defense. Auburn's going to have to be able to get pressure on Ole Miss, definitely on their quarterback, if they want to be able to win. Auburn has really not been able to just straight up get pressure. Auburn's had to really go in some big blitzes, which has burned Auburn in the passing game sometimes. Auburn is going to have to, on the offensive end, they're going to have to be able, Auburn this year, unlike traditionally, has thrown the passes, set up the run, but when Auburn gets able to set up the run, Auburn's actually got to run it. So we're going to see Auburn needs to utilize Tank Bigsby as much as possible. He's Auburn's best offensive player, the true freshman. Auburn's going to have to use him if Auburn wants to win. Ole Miss, they're going to have to force some turnovers. That's how South Carolina won. So we're going to have to see if Ole Miss's defense can do that. We know Ole Miss doesn't have the best defense. We'll make our pick with that game in a little bit. But I'm going to give a big old boom to that Auburn defense. I think that Auburn defense is going to surprise some people. So a big boom for the Auburn defense. I think Auburn's defense is going to show up today in a big way. Then you have Iowa State, Oklahoma State. The winner of this game is going to get a big old boom as they get ready to keep going in the Big 12 race. The winner of this game kind of needs to just win down the stretch if the Big 12 wants a team in the Final Four. A big game in Boone Pickens Stadium on Fox in that middle of the day time slot. I think Iowa State's a really good team, but I think Oklahoma State is a team everyone's been really high on. I like Oklahoma State in this one. I think Oklahoma State's offense is really going to explode. So I like a big old boom for Oklahoma State's offense. And then the Patrick Party game of the week and the best game of any of the late games. Michigan, Minnesota, the Big Ten is back. Number 18, Michigan. They're really going to need to be able to score some points to compete because Minnesota, we know they have a good offense. We watched it in the Outback Bowl last year. It's going to be a big game in Minneapolis on ABC Saturday Night Football. But I think Michigan's defense is going to surprise some people. I think the defenses have not been as good for most conferences once we've kind of kicked off this shortened season. But I think the Big Ten, they've had some time to really see that. So I'm going to give a big old boom to the Michigan defense. I think they're going to surprise some people, and I think they're going to have a big day in Minneapolis. So let's talk about the Patrick Party for a little bit before we get into our final segment, which we'll pick our games. So we got a lot going on in the Patrick Party. Tomorrow morning, early in the morning, we'll go ahead and post our Patrick Party Primetime with Patrick. We'll pick our NFL games. Of course, right after this ends, you can go to our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, rewatch our Patrick Party picks, Breakfast with the Tigers from Byron's. We'll also have our polls for the 4 SEC games if you want to vote for that on our Instagram and Facebook stories. So we got a lot going on in the Patrick Party. Of course, subscribe to our email newsletter on patrickparty.com if you haven't already. And on patrickparty.com, we have our Michigan-Minnesota preview if you want to read more into that game as the Big Ten returns. So that's going to do it here for our Patrick Party pregame show. Our October 24th edition here in 2020, this crazy 2020 season. The Big Ten is back. Enjoy your college football weekend, everybody. Here is our Patrick Party picks from Byron Smokehouse as we enjoy part 1 of Breakfast with the Tigers.
Welcome to the Patrick Party here at Byron Smokehouse. We're going to start a new thing here on the Patrick Party. It's Breakfast with the Tigers. Well, Auburn keeps playing in that noon to 11 o'clock Central time slot. So we're going to have Breakfast with the Tigers, and our first breakfast location is Byron Smokehouse. They have a great sausage, egg, and cheese patty biscuit. Well, let's go ahead and get into our picks. First, you have Nebraska playing Ohio State. The Big Ten is back, a big game. I like Justin Fields, Ryan Day. It's national championship or bust for this team, and I like a big win over Nebraska. And then a ranked matchup between number 14 North Carolina, who lost last week, and NC State. I like North Carolina, Matt Brown, Sam Howell, and a bounce back after losing to Florida State. Then you have Texas and Baylor, a big-time matchup in the Big 12. Texas needs this win, and I think the Longhorns will get it over the Bears, who they lost to last year. Alabama plays Tennessee in a classic SEC matchup on the SEC on CBS Game of the Week. I like the Tide big in this one. They blew out Georgia last week. Then you have Florida State, Notre Dame, another big matchup. Can Florida State get another win? I think they can. Louisville has not been able to consistently score enough points. Kentucky plays Missouri. Missouri's one of the worst teams in the SEC. Kentucky's kind of found their stride. I like the Wildcats in that one. Then you have Michigan, Minnesota, the Patrick Party's game of the week. I like Michigan in this big-time game. I just don't think Minnesota is going to be able to. They didn't return all the talent from last year's Outback Bowl championship year. I like the Wolverines. And then Auburn plays at the road at Ole Miss at Vaught Hemingway Stadium. I like the Tigers big in this one over the Lane Train. Auburn's offense will have to score enough points against that terrible Ole Miss defense because you know Lane Kiffin and Jordan Rice Plumlee are going to have lots of points to score. That's all here from the Patrick Party Breakfast at the Tigers Part 1.